you're saying that once they're here and they get their degrees, they have to come back to the continent at age 25 and work on the continent for 10 years?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Huh, that's a bit of a trade-off. What if they want to work in Europe? What if they want to work in the States?
Well, I think it's also a sense of you've been given a privilege. You've been given, remember, we get these kids from refugee camps.
Yeah.
We get them from the middle of Johannesburg in big suburb in Santon. We believe that talent is universal, opportunity is not. And we're big believers in trying to make sure that the best talent that Africa has that will be transformative to the continent is channeled through the African Leadership Academy. So they have a responsibility and obligation as well, we strongly believe, to the continent, that we have given them this privilege to go to get some of the best education in the world. But they're special kids. These are kids who are committed to coming in the continent. So we actually don't even need to force them.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need to force them. Many of them are very committed to coming back to the continent.
Wow.
And they can work anywhere on the continent. They don't have to work in the respective countries that they came from.
Africa is their home.
Okay.
So we do a lot of things on the campus just to promote the Pan-Africanism. So for example, you never share a room with someone from your country. We eat a different African food every Friday. We celebrate every single African Independence Day. The kids from the country will go in front of the school and will sing the national anthem. We have a very active guest speaker program, which we get Pan-African guest speakers to come and speak to the kids. So everything on the campus is about celebrating the continent and learning from what we have gone through, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Wow. Well, you were talking about these kids, dedicating their life to giving back. But Malaak, you've also dedicated your entire life to giving back and the other projects that you're working on with the Angel Rock Project. Tell us why you've chosen to dedicate your life to such causes.
Firstly, I believe that service is a rent you pay for living, right? And to whom much is given, much is required. So that's number one. But I was very fortunate early in my career to work for an extraordinary nonprofit, UNICEF. I started my career in PR and special events, public relations and special events in the entertainment industry. And believe it or not, I didn't really like it.
Really?
But I didn't. But I loved PR and I loved special events, so I thought, how can I use these talents that I have and that I enjoy doing for good? And I ended up at UNICEF, and I was in charge of actually celebrity relations and special events. But it's a whole different story when you're traveling to Africa, say, with a celebrity and promoting an issue or a cause than it is to some of the celebrity stuff we hear about, right? Yeah. So it was very fulfilling. My first trip with UNICEF was to Liberia. It was right after the 7-year Civil War. The country was still bombed out. There was no electricity, no water. Children were traumatized from the war. And I took the actor Lawrence Fishburne, who was interested in meeting former child soldiers, kids who had been stolen from their houses in the dark of night and forced to put an AK-47, drugged up, and fight. And UNICEF's extraordinary work of reunifying children with their parents, offering them psychosocial counseling, and job training if necessary. If you're a kid that's been fighting for 7 years, you might not be able to go back to school, right? And it was a very emotional trip, but I was trying to keep it together. On the third day, we went to a bombed-out church where UNICEF workers were teaching kids with School in the Box, which is this box of materials that you can put under a tree and teach up to 200 kids anywhere in the world. And this young girl, she was probably about 6, came up to me and she tapped on my leg and she looked up with these big, beautiful eyes and she said, "Hi, ma'am. We want peace, not war. Please, ma'am, bring us peace, not war." And I mean, I just lost it. But that little girl is my beacon. She's my guiding light. The fact that I am able to work on behalf of the most disenfranchised of us, and in particular, vulnerable children and the girl child, is the biggest blessing of my life.
Wow.
I've heard a number of people say that Africa's success will help shape the future of the world at large. How do you feel about that? It sounds a bit hyperbolic, a bit grandiose, but do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely.
And I want both of you to weigh in.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the numbers that are coming out of the population forecast, for example, I think by 2050, almost half the world's workforce will be African. So there's a significant amount of talent coming through that the world will leverage on what Africa is producing. We, as I said, we're the youngest continent. Our average age is something like 23, 24. If you compare to the US, there are 10,000 Americans turning 60 every day until the year 2030. So we're facing very contrasting fortunes, if I may say, going forward.
Other populations around the world are diminishing.
Africa's
Africa's population
growing.
Across the continent continues
Exactly.
to grow.
We're also getting a generation of young people who are better educated than their parents, who are a lot more aware than their parents. So there's, and you look at our economic growth, we're growing at almost 7%, almost the fastest economic growth across the world. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Absolutely no doubt.
Malaak, a few years ago, Oprah received some flack for opening her school in South Africa. Some people said, why are you taking resources that should be given to American children and opening a school for African children halfway around the globe? Why do you feel she received that sort of backlash, and do you think it was fair and warranted?
I absolutely don't think it's fair, and I've received some of the same backlash when I'm twittering in, say, Diepsloot, which is a shantytown in South Africa, and talking about the work that I do there. People tweet back to me, why are you there? Why aren't you in the United States doing work? Well, first of all, I do work in the United States as well. But, you know, my outlook is very global. I believe in the great African saying that it takes a village. I also believe that every child is our child. And just like Frank was saying, when you uplift children on the continent, there is going to be a positive economic result for all of us. I love the fact that it's 55% girls. You know, there's a saying that, and you guys may not agree, that when you educate a boy, you educate a man.
Yes.
But when you educate a girl, you educate a family, you educate the community.
I agree.
Yes, right?
Agreed.
Women leaders tend to lift up other than themselves.
Yeah.
So the work that Frank is doing, the work of this academy, the work of these phenomenal children is going to have such a positive impact on the continent and on the world.
Well, I already know a lot of people are wanting to help you guys, so how can people get involved in giving back?
So there's many ways. If you're ever, first of all, if you're in Africa, if you find a talented young person between the ages of 15 and 19, plug them into our admission process.
Okay.
And we don't care if you find them in church, at traffic lights, it doesn't matter. You get a talented young African, please plug them into our admission process. People in the US, the diaspora, by all means, we're always looking for host families. We get kids from refugee camps who've never been on a plane or out of Africa. So when they come here, they need a soft landing. That's another way. We're a non-profit. So we're very happy for the US because we've been heavily dependent on the States. So it costs us money to educate the kids, to run the academy. So any financial help would be very, very welcome. And from a corporate perspective, we're always looking for opportunities, as Malaak mentioned, for internships and careers. So any person who's running a business in Africa and would like to help, and also not just help us, but get top African talent, very welcome for that.
And we can find all that information at your website at
AfricanLeadershipAcademy.org.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having
here.
us.
And we're definitely participating.
Yes, definitely.
Sign me up. Okay. And you're watching Arise Entertainment 360.